Hey everyone, Dr. Krenn here with some helpful tips on how to go back to school safely. Most importantly, if you're sick, don't go to school. Stay home. If you have fever, cough, or shortness of breath, it's important that you stay home and contact your physician right away to see if you need to be tested for the coronavirus or be evaluated for other conditions. Also, if you have 3 or more of the following symptoms, you should also stay home and contact your physician. If you have fatigue, headache, sore throat, congestion, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or a rash, you should also stay home and contact your physician. Now parents, I know it's going to be tempting to say, oh, my child only has a cold, or they only have allergies, and send them to school. But it's going to be really important that we all really take a hard look at whether our child is sick or not, and keep them home if they appear to be ill. That's the only way we can keep others from getting sick and keep this virus from spreading. To help with this, most schools have suspended their attendance programs that normally reward perfect attendance with additional points, increases in grades, or other awards. This will take the pressure off of your child from feeling like they really need to be at school, or take the pressure off of you thinking that you really need to send them so that they don't miss out on these opportunities. As you head back to school, the first thing you're going to want to do is grab a mask. I know this has become somewhat of a political hot potato, and there's a lot of debate on both sides of whether you should wear a mask, not wear a mask. But we know from recent studies, as well as recent experience in our own community with the Great Clips exposure, that masks work. They're not 100%, but they help. So it's important that everybody wears their mask anytime that you're in an indoor space or you can't social distance, even in an outdoor space. Now, a lot of kids haven't spent a lot of time wearing masks this summer. May have wore it for a few minutes in the grocery store, trip to the dentist, maybe some other indoor activities that they've had, but most of them have not worn a mask for the length of time that they're going to have to wear it during a normal school day. So I suggest that you start now practicing at home wearing a mask for longer and longer periods of time so that your child can get used to it and it's not such an annoyance on the first day of school. Teachers are going to have their hands full with meeting new kids, educating about the rules of the classroom, and now we've also added on mask police to this. So if you can help your child understand why it's important and why they need to do it now, that'll make it easier on them for their first day and first weeks of school. Now there's a right way and a wrong way to wear a mask. This is a wrong way. This is also a wrong way. And yet another wrong way. It's important that the mask cover the nose and mouth all times when worn. You also want to encourage your child not to touch their face when they have their mask on as much as they can. Touching a mask or touching your face with your hands is going to transfer whatever's on your hands, including potentially any germs, to that mask and get them nearer to the mouth, nose, and eyes where we know the coronavirus enters our bodies. So help them understand why it's important not to touch their face, not to touch their mask. Because of that, you're going to want to make sure that your child has a mask that fits properly. It should fit fairly snug, but loose enough that it doesn't move when they talk up and down and force them to constantly readjust it to keep their nose and mouth covered. The current recommendation is to have the mask be made of cotton and be at least 2 layers thick. This will help protect not only the child from spreading their germs, but will also give them a little bit of protection from germs coming into their body. Again, not 100%, but definitely helpful. Next, you're going to want to help your kids understand why they have to wash their hands so much. Washing hands is exceedingly important. They should wash their hands when they go in the school building, when they leave the school building, when they go to lunch, after lunch, anytime they've been outside for PE or recess. Washing hands frequently is definitely going to be important. They should also wash their hands for at least 20 seconds. There are several ways to help them remember to do this, whether it's singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or Happy Birthday twice, but helping them understand that they need to wash their hands for at least 20 seconds to scrub all the germs off and wash them down the sink. Another tip that isn't always talked about is even though they're going to be wearing their masks, they still need to keep their distance from others. It's still going to be important, even with masks on, to stay at least 6 feet away from other persons as much as you can. Now, this isn't going to always be possible. Some of the classrooms aren't going to be big enough to socially distance 6 feet. Hallways are going to become crowded, but they should do the best they can to keep at least 6 feet apart. If we combine all three of these things, wearing a mask, washing our hands, and keeping 6 feet apart, we can all do our part to help stop the spread of this terrible virus. Some other things that you're going to want to talk to your kids about not doing when they get back to school is not sharing food at lunch, not sharing supplies in the classroom. Most classrooms are going to have individual supplies laid out for the kids so that they don't have to touch things that other people have touched. And that's going to be really hard for a lot of kids, especially the younger kids, because they're used to hugging and touching and just being in everybody's bubble or space. And that's going to be hard for them to understand why they can't do that, especially since they probably haven't spent a lot of time with their friends this summer. And they're going to want to give hugs and high fives and just be close to people, because we've not really allowed a lot of that this summer thanks to having to keep everybody separate. But they're going to have to understand that it's going to be important to keep doing that just a little bit longer. The more that we can keep the virus infections down, the faster we can get back to doing all the things that we want to do. I'd also recommend that you talk to your kids ahead of time about how things are going to look a little different when they get to school. Teachers are going to be wearing masks. Principals are going to be wearing masks. Classrooms are going to look a little different. Desks are going to be spread out. There may not be communal areas in the classrooms that they're used to seeing, like couches or bean bags. Hallways may have markings on the floors directing kids to walk on one side or the other depending on what direction they're going. Lunchrooms are probably going to look different. They're not going to be able to sit right next to their friends and chat during lunch. They're going to be socially distanced. It's going to be especially important at lunch because they're going to have to take their mask off during lunch. And so the only way to protect them at that point is going to be to keep them physically distanced from other persons. And that's going to be hard because lunch is usually a social time. Recess is usually a social time. We're going to have to try to stay socially distanced at lunch and recess, and that's going to be difficult. Lunchtime might look different in other ways too. A lot of schools are going to prepackaged meals. They may not have a salad bar that they've had before. There may be a lot of differences that kids are going to notice real quick when they get back to school. If you're aware of what those might be, now's a good time to start talking to them so they're not so surprised when they get into school. I also recommend sending water bottles with your kiddo to school. A lot of schools have turned off water fountains. Some of them have replaced them with bottle filling stations. It's going to be important for them to be able to stay hydrated throughout the day, but there may not be as many opportunities for them to get water at school. Another thing that you're going to want to do is try to keep as many routines before and after school the same as possible. Things are going to look so radically different to your kiddos that you're going to want to try to provide them with some level of normalcy as much as you possibly can. Drop-off routines might be a little bit different, but try to keep your morning routine before you head to school the same as what they might expect. Try to keep your after-school routines the same. If they partake in any after-school activities, sports, most schools are having those, again, with masks and socially distancing. But it's going to be important for them to partake in some of those things because they've been so isolated this summer. Kids really need the opportunity to get back together and socialize for their development. The best opportunities for them to socialize are going to be with people that you know well, that you know how they've been treating the virus, that you know whether they've been engaging in any high-risk activities. They're going to be your safest individuals for you to be close with and spend more time with, and yet having a decreased risk of contracting the virus for them. Not saying that you can't go to a sport or go to a club or partake in some other after-school activities, but the risk of doing so is going to be a little bit higher than people that you know very well and know how they've been handling the virus situation themselves. All right, that's all I have for you today. Hope these were helpful. I hope everybody has a great school year, everybody stays safe, and hopefully if we can do these things, we can get through this pandemic quickly and everybody can get back to normal. Have a good school year and be safe.